It's 7 in the morning. You're sitting on the edge of your bed. The alarm went off 10 minutes ago, but getting up feels like lifting a weight you can't name. That heaviness has a name. Millions of people feel it every day. And for decades we've had two main answers, medication or therapy. Both work. But what if there's a third? A prescription that doesn't come in a bottle, that doesn't require an appointment, that you can start today for free. Here's what the latest research says. In February 2026, researchers published one of the largest mental health analyses ever conducted. They pooled data from hundreds of studies, tens of thousands of people, ages 10 to 90. And the finding was striking. Aerobic exercise, running, swimming, dancing, reduced depression and anxiety symptoms as effectively as medication, sometimes more. And that's not all. A separate study found something even stranger. Exercise doesn't just change how you feel, it appears to change the physical structure of your brain. Let's start with what we've always known. Exercise is good for you. It strengthens your heart, builds muscle, helps with sleep. None of this is new. What's new is the scale of the evidence. The 2026 meta-analysis published in the International Journal of Mental Health Nursing wasn't a single study. It was a synthesis of the entire field. They found something psychiatrists have long suspected but couldn't prove with this much confidence. Movement isn't just helpful for mental health, it's therapeutic, in the clinical sense. For decades, doctors have told patients with depression to try exercise, but it often felt like an afterthought, a suggestion, not a treatment. That framing is changing. Now here's a crucial distinction. The research looked at mild to moderate depression, not severe cases, not people in crisis. The population matters. For those with severe depression, medication remains essential. Exercise isn't a replacement for psychiatric care. It's a complement, and for some people, a first-line option worth discussing with a doctor. Here's what the 2026 analysis found specifically. Aerobic exercise produced a medium-sized reduction in depression symptoms. For anxiety, the effect was small to medium. These are clinically meaningful numbers, comparable to and sometimes exceeding medication or talk therapy. That's not a fringe claim. That's what the data showed across tens of thousands of participants. The benefits weren't evenly distributed, though. Some groups responded more strongly than others. Young adults aged 18 to 30 showed the most pronounced improvements. Postpartum women were another standout group. Why these groups? Researchers speculate that younger brains may have more neuroplasticity, and for new mothers, hormonal fluctuations might make the brain particularly responsive to exercise-induced changes. Another finding, group exercise outperformed solo workouts. Supervised sessions beat unsupervised ones. The social component seems to matter, maybe as much as the movement itself. Now let's talk about the brain age study. This one came from the Journal of Sport and Health Science in January 2026. It's smaller, 130 adults, but the findings are genuinely surprising. Participants were aged 26 to 58. They did supervised aerobic exercise twice a week, 60 minutes per session, plus additional home workouts totaling about 150 minutes weekly. After 1 year, researchers scanned their brains. The exercise group's brains looked, on average, 0.6 years younger than the control group, not subjectively, on MRI. Here's the strange part. Blood pressure didn't change. Weight stayed the same. The usual markers we associate with exercise benefits weren't moving. Something else was happening. The researchers were honest about this. They wrote that the mechanism remains unclear. Exercise appears to change the brain through pathways we haven't fully mapped yet. We do know some mechanisms. Exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which promotes neuron growth. It reduces inflammation. It regulates the stress response system called the HPA axis. But those pathways should show up as cardiovascular improvements, lower blood pressure, better metabolic markers. This study found brain changes without those changes, which is unexpected. This is where science gets interesting. When the data doesn't fit our models, it means our models are incomplete. Something about movement changes the brain in ways we haven't figured out yet. Now, the mental health research did identify specific mechanisms. High-intensity aerobic exercise affects neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, the same targets antidepressants work on. It also upregulates neurotrophic factors, proteins that help neurons survive and grow, and it dampens the inflammatory markers that correlate with depression. Multiple pathways working together. Let's talk about what this means practically. Because knowing that exercise helps isn't the same as doing it, especially when you're depressed. That's the cruel paradox. Depression steals motivation. It makes even small tasks feel monumental. Telling someone with depression to just go for a run, that misses the point entirely. So here's what the research actually suggests. It isn't about willpower. It's about structure. Supervised exercise with accountability and social connection showed the strongest effects. Consider finding a class or a training partner. The dose that matched medication effects was about 150 minutes per week of moderate aerobic activity. That works out to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Manageable chunks. Aerobic activities showed the strongest effects. Running, swimming, cycling, dancing. Activities that elevate your heart rate and keep it elevated. Resistance training helped too, but aerobic was more powerful. And here's something important. Choose something you'll actually do. The best exercise is the one you'll stick with. Consistency mattered more than intensity in the long-term studies. The BrainAge study protocol was specific. 2 supervised 60-minute sessions per week, plus home exercise adding up to 150 total minutes. Participants maintained this for a full year. Now, I want to be clear about something. This research doesn't mean you should stop taking antidepressants. Medication saves lives. It stabilizes people in crisis. It makes therapy possible for many. What the evidence suggests is that exercise may be a valid first-line treatment for mild to moderate depression, worth discussing with your healthcare provider, not instead of professional care, alongside it. Some psychiatrists worry about emphasizing exercise. They fear it could delay necessary treatment, or worse, add to the shame depressed patients already feel about struggling to function. That's a real concern. Saying just exercise to someone who can barely get out of bed isn't help. It's dismissal. The how matters as much as the what. So here's a more realistic approach. If you're struggling, start impossibly small, a 5-minute walk around the block, not to fix anything, just to move. Building momentum matters more than hitting targets. Recruit support. The research showed group settings work better than solo exercise. A friend, a class, a trainer, someone to expect you, so showing up isn't entirely dependent on your own motivation. If you're currently on medication, don't change anything without consulting your doctor. But you might ask, would adding structured exercise help? What would that look like for my specific situation? The meta-analysis found benefits across the age spectrum from 10 to 90. But the strongest effects showed up in that 18 to 30 bracket. If you're young and struggling, this data is especially relevant. For postpartum women specifically, the findings are striking. This population often faces barriers to medication, concerns about breastfeeding, side effects. Exercise offers an alternative worth exploring with a doctor. The BrainAge findings add another layer. We're not just talking about feeling better. We're talking about structural changes that show up on a scan. That's different. That's biological. 0.6 years of BrainAge reversal in 1 year of exercise. That may not sound like much, but compounded over decades of consistent movement, and the implications are significant. And remember, this effect happened without changes in blood pressure or weight. Whatever exercise is doing to the brain, it's not just a downstream effect of cardiovascular improvement. It's something more direct. So what's the takeaway? Consider movement as medicine, not a replacement for professional care, but a legitimate therapeutic intervention supported by some of the largest studies we have. Start where you are, not where you think you should be. If that's 5 minutes of walking, that counts. If that's a gentle swim, that counts. The research supports moderate, consistent effort over heroic attempts. Find accountability. Join a class. Get a workout buddy. Schedule sessions like appointments. The social scaffolding isn't optional. The data suggests it's part of why group exercise works so well. Talk to your doctor, especially if you're already being treated for depression or anxiety. Ask whether exercise could complement your current approach. Make it a real conversation, not a side note. And if you're supporting someone with depression, consider moving with them. Don't prescribe, participate. A walk together beats advice from the sidelines. We don't fully understand why this works. That's the honest truth. The mechanisms are partially mapped: neurotransmitters, inflammation, neuroplasticity. But something remains unexplained. Science is comfortable with that. What we do know is that exercise consistently reduced symptoms across tens of thousands of people, ages 10 to 90. Different countries, different contexts. That consistency is what makes the evidence compelling. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine. If you found this useful, consider subscribing. We cover evidence-based health stories like this every week. The research is there, the path is clearer than ever, and the prescription? It might just be movement. I'm going to leave you with this. The heaviest weight you lift might be the one that gets you out the door. But once you're moving, momentum tends to take over. Start small. Start today. Your brain will thank you.